The fog clung to the water like a shroud, concealing the jagged Maine coastline in a ghostly veil. Liam Thornton, a weathered lobsterman of 30 years, squinted through the mist as something solid took shape against the rocky shore. His boat's engine hummed low as he approached, breath catching in his throat when recognition dawned. "The driftwood," he whispered. The 24-foot vessel lay tilted against the rocks, half buried in sand and tangled seaweed. Its once gleaming white hull now bore deep scratches, yet, strangely, the boat appeared largely intact. No sign of violent destruction, no evidence of a desperate struggle. Liam's weathered hands trembled as he secured his own boat and waded through shallow water. 3 months of searching had yielded nothing but heartache and empty waters. Now, without warning, the Greywood family's boat had returned, empty, silent, and bearing secrets the sea refused to surrender. Inside the cabin, Liam discovered Brielle's waterlogged sketchbook, pages swollen with seawater, haunting images of storm clouds and churning seas still visible despite the damage. A single fishing lure dangled from a frayed rope, swaying gently with the rocking of the waves. A child's nature guide lay open to a page about seabirds, the ink bleeding across waterlogged paper. But of Anton, Brielle, and their 12-year-old daughter Willow, there was no trace. The driftwood had returned. But where was the family of 3 who had sailed out on that fateful May morning? Before we dive into this haunting mystery, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe to join our community of mystery seekers. What we're about to explore is one of those cases that reminds us how quickly ordinary days can turn into extraordinary nightmares. Harbor Heights, Maine, is the kind of coastal town where everyone knows your name but respects your privacy. Generations of fishermen have cast their nets from its weathered docks, while artists capture the rugged beauty of its rocky shores. It was the perfect place for the Greywood family to build their life. Anton Gray was 42, a reserved but passionate environmental science professor at Harbor Heights Community College. His colleagues described him as methodical and precise, a man who checked weather patterns twice and triple verified his navigation calculations before any voyage. He'd grown up sailing these waters, learning their moods and movements from his father, who'd been a commercial fisherman for 30 years. Anton knew these waters better than he knew the back of his hand, said Robert Fallon, fellow professor and friend. He could read the clouds, sense a shift in the wind. He wasn't reckless. That's what makes this whole thing so damn strange. Brielle Gray, 39, had moved to Harbor Heights 15 years earlier, drawn by the wild beauty of the Maine coastline. Her watercolor paintings of stormy seascapes and tranquil harbors hung in local galleries and homes throughout the region. She'd met Anton while painting at the harbor, their love story as natural as the tides. Brielle could capture the soul of the ocean, explained Diane Mercer, owner of the local art gallery. There was something almost prophetic in her work, like she understood the sea's power to give and take away. Their daughter Willow, just 12, inherited her father's analytical mind and her mother's artistic soul. A top student at Harbor Heights Middle School, she filled notebooks with detailed observations of tide pools and sketches of marine creatures. Her science teacher called her a born researcher, while her art instructor noted her unusual ability to find beauty in the overlooked. The Greywood home sat on a modest bluff overlooking the harbor, a weathered blue Cape Cod with white trim and a wraparound porch. Inside, Anton's navigation charts shared wall space with Brielle's paintings and Willow's science fair ribbons. It was a home filled with books, art supplies, and artifacts collected from countless beach walks. Their boat, the Driftwood, was a 24-foot cabin cruiser that Anton had lovingly restored over the years. Though not luxurious, it was meticulously maintained, equipped with modern safety features and communication equipment. The family had taken dozens of fishing trips aboard the vessel, navigating familiar routes along the coastline. "That boat was Anton's pride and joy," said Harbor Master Gerald Pike. "He maintained it like it was a member of the family. Safety equipment, radio, emergency supplies. Everything was always in perfect working order. I inspected it myself just 2 weeks before they disappeared." In Harbor Heights, the Greywoods were known as a close-knit family who shared a profound love for the ocean, which makes what happened next all the more devastating. May 7th, 2023 dawned cool and overcast in Harbor Heights. A gentle breeze stirred the flags along the marina as Anton Greywood loaded supplies onto the driftwood. The family had planned this Saturday fishing trip for weeks, watching weather forecasts and tidal charts with careful attention. Valerie Porter, who runs the harbor's small convenience store, was one of the last people to see the family. They came in around 7:15 that morning. Anton bought coffee for himself and hot chocolate for Brielle and Willow. They seemed relaxed, happy. Willow was so excited about using her new fishing rod. Security footage from the marina captured the family's final movements on land. Anton, methodical as always, performed a thorough check of the boat's systems. Brielle arranged their supplies in the cabin, while Willow bounced impatiently on the dock, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical braid, her life vest already secured. At 7:42 a.m., the driftwood pulled away from the harbor. Marina attendant Kevin Walsh remembered waving as they departed. The sky was gray but calm. Nothing in the forecast suggested trouble. Anton even joked that he'd bring me back a striper if they got lucky. Weather reports that morning indicated moderate conditions with a 30% chance of scattered showers later in the day. Nothing to concern an experienced sailor like Anton, but Harbor Master Pike later discovered that the National Weather Service had updated their forecast at 9:30 a.m. after the Greywoods had already lost cell reception. The update warned of a rapidly developing low-pressure system moving toward the coast. The family's planned route, according to friends, would take them to a favorite fishing spot about 4 miles offshore, a location known locally as the Shelf, for its sudden depth change that attracted diverse marine life. Willow had been collecting data there for a school science project on marine ecosystems. By mid-morning, the Greywood family had reached their destination. According to the boat's recovered GPS data, they spent several hours drifting along the shelf. Brielle's salvage sketchbook contained serene drawings time-stamped from this period, gentle waves, diving seabirds, and Willow's delighted expression as she reeled in a small mackerel. The family shared lunch around noon, homemade sandwiches, apple slices, and cookies that Willow had baked the night before. A partially eaten lunch was later found preserved in the cabin, suggesting their day had proceeded normally to this point. At 1:37 p.m., Anton sent a final text message to Robert Fallon. "Perfect day on the water. Willow caught 2 fish already. Might stay out a bit longer than planned." Cell tower data confirmed the message originated from their fishing location. It would be the last communication anyone received from the Greywood family. What happened in the hours that followed remains subject to speculation, but meteorological data shows a dramatic shift in conditions. The gentle breeze strengthened into gusty winds. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon. Temperature dropped 7 degrees in less than 30 minutes. The recovered navigational equipment indicates that at approximately 2:15 p.m., the driftwood changed course, heading back toward Harbor Heights. This timeline aligns with the rapidly deteriorating weather conditions. Anton, ever cautious, had apparently recognized the danger and decided to return to port, but they never made it. The first indication something was wrong came at 3:07 p.m., when the Coast Guard received a fragmented distress call. The recording, later released to investigators, is chilling in its brevity. "Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Driftwood. Position approximately 3 miles east of taking on water. Need immediate. The transmission ended abruptly, replaced by the static of an open channel. Coast Guard Lieutenant Commander Andrea Reynolds recalled the moment. The transmission was broken, but you could hear the urgency. There was also something else in the background, what sounded like a child crying. By 3:45 p.m., dark clouds had engulfed Harbor Heights. Winds whipped across the harbor at 45 knots, and driving rain reduced visibility to near zero. Local fishermen scrambled to secure their vessels as waves hammered the docks. Harbor Heights resident Richard Morris, whose home overlooks the bay, witnessed the storm's ferocity. It was unlike anything I'd seen before. It came out of nowhere. The water turned violent, almost black. I remember thinking about anyone caught out there and saying a little prayer. At 5:26 p.m., when the driftwood hadn't returned and repeated attempts to reach them by radio failed, Gerald Pike called the Coast Guard to report them overdue. Within 20 minutes, rescue protocols were activated. "We deployed immediately despite the dangerous conditions," said Lieutenant Commander Reynolds. 2 vessels and a helicopter began search patterns based on the driftwood's last known position and probable drift patterns. As night fell, the search intensified. Coast Guard vessels cut through churning waves, powerful searchlights piercing the darkness. The helicopter's spotlight swept across miles of angry sea. By morning, the storm had passed, but there was no sign of the Greywood family. Over the next 7 days, the search expanded to cover more than 1,200 square miles of ocean. The Coast Guard was joined by Maine Marine Patrol, private fishing vessels, and volunteers from neighboring coastal communities. They found nothing, no debris, no life jackets, no emergency raft. Search Coordinator Jack Donovan described the growing sense of hopelessness. After the 3rd day, statistics weren't in our favor, but we kept going because we knew this family. Anton was too skilled, too prepared to just vanish. We kept expecting to find something, anything, that would tell us what happened. On day 7, with no evidence to pursue and resources stretching thin, the Coast Guard officially suspended their search operation. The Greywood family was listed as missing at sea, presumed dead. Harbor Heights fell silent in a way it had never been before. The disappearance of the Greywood family tore through Harbor Heights like a physical wound. In small coastal communities, the sea gives life, but also takes it, a reality residents accept with stoic resolve. But this was different. The complete absence of evidence defied understanding and denied closure. "It's the not knowing that haunts you," said Diane Mercer, who organized a community vigil at the harbor 1 week after the search was suspended. "When there's no goodbye, no funeral, you're suspended in this terrible limbo." Over 300 people gathered that evening, holding candles against the gathering darkness. Anton's students, Brielle's fellow artists, Willow's classmates and teachers, all united in grief and bewilderment. They shared stories of the family, Anton's patient guidance, Brielle's quiet generosity, Willow's infectious enthusiasm. At Harbor Heights Middle School, Willow's empty desk became an impromptu memorial. Classmates left notes, seashells, and small treasures on her chair. Her science teacher, Ms. Abernathy, placed Willow's last project, a meticulous study of local tide pool ecosystems, under glass in the school's entrance hall. "Children shouldn't just disappear," Ms. Abernathy said, her voice breaking. "How do you explain to 12-year-olds that their friend went fishing with her parents and never came home?" The community transformed the Greywood home into a living memorial. Neighbors tended the garden that Brielle had lovingly cultivated. Someone hung wind chimes from the porch rafters, their gentle music a constant reminder of those who were absent. Inside, everything remained untouched, as if the family might return at any moment to continue their interrupted lives. Dr. Eleanor Bennett, a psychologist specializing in grief counseling, worked closely with the Harbor Heights community in the months following the disappearance. What they're experiencing is called ambiguous loss, grieving someone who is physically absent but psychologically present. There's no closure, no certainty, which makes the normal grieving process impossible. People become stuck in a state of waiting. As weeks passed, theories circulated. Some were rational, a rogue wave, a catastrophic equipment failure. Others veered into darker territory, foul play, deliberate disappearance. A few elderly residents whispered about the sea's ancient hunger, reviving folklore that had fallen dormant in modern times. Robert Fallon organized a support group for those closest to the family. We meet every Tuesday evening. Sometimes we talk about them, sometimes we just sit together in silence. Having a space to acknowledge the absence helps, even when there are no answers. This community's response shows how deeply missing persons cases affect us all. If you're finding this story compelling, hit that like button and share it with someone who appreciates these unsolved mysteries. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people, and sometimes that's how new information comes to light. For 91 days, the Driftwood and its passengers remained vanished without trace. Then, on August 9, 2023, as dawn broke through a thick coastal fog, everything changed. Liam Thornton had been setting lobster traps since 4:30 a.m., navigating the familiar waters despite limited visibility. As he rounded Mercer's Point, approximately 20 miles northeast of Harbor Heights, something caught his eye, an unnatural shape against the rocky shoreline. At first, I thought it was just another piece of driftwood, Thornton recalled, the irony not lost on him. But something about it didn't sit right. When I got closer and saw the name on the hull, my blood ran cold. The driftwood lay wedged between two large boulders on a remote stretch of beach, rarely visited except by the occasional hiker. The boat was positioned oddly, as if placed there deliberately rather than violently thrown by waves. Its hull bore scratches and minor damage consistent with ocean exposure, but remarkably, the vessel remained largely intact. Thornton radioed the Coast Guard immediately. Within an hour, the beach transformed into a secured investigation site. Yellow tape cordoned off the area as officials photographed the scene from every angle before disturbing any evidence. The condition of the vessel was puzzling, admitted Coast Guard investigator Daniel Morgan. After 3 months at sea, we expected significant damage, perhaps just fragments washing ashore. Instead, the boat was eerily preserved. The exterior showed signs of prolonged exposure to salt water and sun, faded paint, some corrosion on metal fixtures. But there was no catastrophic damage that would explain why the family had abandoned ship or perished. The engine was intact, though waterlogged. The emergency life raft was missing from its storage compartment, but no other safety equipment had been deployed. Inside the cabin, investigators found a tableau frozen in time. The family's belongings remained largely where they would have been left during a normal outing. Brielle's sketchbook lay open on the small table, its pages containing increasingly frantic drawings that seemed to document the approaching storm. The final sketch, barely legible through water damage, showed massive waves and what appeared to be a dark shape in the water beside the boat. Willow's nature guide was open to a section on deep-sea creatures, with handwritten notes in the margin. Saw something big. Dad says probably dolphin, but too dark to tell. A half-eaten lunch sat in sealed containers, preserved by the cabin's protection from the elements. A first aid kit had been opened, its contents scattered across the small counter. 3 life jackets were missing, exactly the number the family would have been wearing. Most puzzling was a fishing lure dangled from a frayed rope tied to the ship's radio antenna, an apparent signal or marker that made little sense to investigators. It looked deliberate, said forensic technician Laura Simmons. The kind of marker someone might create if they needed to be found. But if they abandoned ship, Why mark the boat and not themselves? The boat's navigation system, though damaged by water exposure, yielded partial data, showing the driftwood's erratic movement during the storm. After initially heading toward Harbor Heights, the vessel made a sudden course change farther out to sea before its electronic signature disappeared completely. Coast Guard officials and local police secured the vessel for transport to their marine investigation facility. As word spread through Harbor Heights that the driftwood had returned without its passengers, a crushing wave of grief and renewed questions swept through the community. The boat had come home. The Greywood family had not. The reappearance of the driftwood triggered an immediate reopening of the investigation. The boat was carefully transported to the Coast Guard's Marine Forensics Facility in Portland, where a team of specialists began a comprehensive examination. When a vessel returns without its crew, it tells a story, explained Marine investigator Alex Torres. Our job is to listen carefully to what it's saying. The initial assessment confirmed what was observed at the discovery site. The driftwood had not suffered catastrophic damage. The hull remained sound, with no evidence of collision with another vessel or submerged object. There were no signs of fire or explosion. The mechanical systems, while corroded from saltwater exposure, showed no pre-incident failure that would have endangered the family. It's what we didn't find that troubled us most, Torres continued. No significant blood evidence, no indication of violence or struggle on board. If the family had been injured or worse, we would expect to find biological traces. The boat's VHF radio was functional, but set to the emergency channel, consistent with the partial distress call received on May 7th. The GPS unit yielded corrupted but partially recoverable data showing the driftwood's path until approximately 3:12 p.m. on the day of disappearance, when the signal abruptly terminated. Marine electronics specialist Trevor Hammond reconstructed this final data. The boat was heading back to harbor when it suddenly diverted about 80 degrees eastward, moving at increasing speed. Then, nothing. It's as if someone deliberately changed course or the vessel was pulled off course by an external force. Weather data from that day revealed more than initially reported. The scattered showers forecast had evolved into something more ominous, a rare micro-burst storm system that developed with unusual speed and intensity. However, even this updated information couldn't fully explain the family's complete disappearance. We've seen vessels caught in worse conditions where crews survived or, at minimum, bodies were recovered, said Lieutenant Commander Reynolds. The total absence of physical evidence is what makes this case so perplexing. Brielle's sketchbook became a focal point for investigators. Forensic analysis confirmed the drawings were made sequentially on May 7th, with timestamps matching the family's journey. Art analyst Dr. Camille Porter examined the increasingly disturbed images. The early sketches show normal maritime scenes, willow fishing, seabirds, cloud formations. Around 1:30 p.m., the style changes dramatically. The lines become frantic, pressured. The final images are almost abstract, violent water, and what appears to be a large shape beneath or beside the boat. When enhanced through digital imaging, this final sketch revealed something troubling: a massive, elongated form in the water near the driftwood. Marine biologists consulted on the case couldn't definitively identify what creature, if any, it might represent. It could be a stylistic representation of a wave, suggested marine biologist Dr. Nathan Wells. However, if taken literally, the proportions would suggest something larger than any known species in these waters. Investigators also recovered a waterproof camera from a storage compartment. Most images were family photos from previous outings, but the final 3 photos, time-stamped from that fateful day, showed the approaching storm clouds, Willow pointing excitedly at something in the water, and a blurry image of dark water with what might be a large disturbance on the surface. The boat's bilge pump had been running continuously. suggesting the vessel had indeed been taking on water, as reported in the distress call. However, the hull integrity remained sound, raising questions about where the water was entering. Most curious was the missing emergency life raft. The driftwood carried a 6-person inflatable raft in a hard-shell case. The case was found open, the raft gone. This suggested the family had deployed it intentionally, yet no trace of the bright orange raft had been found during the extensive search operations or in the 3 months since. If they abandoned ship in the raft, where is it? Questioned Coast Guard Commander Franklin. These rafts are designed to be highly visible and difficult to sink. Even if the worst happened, some component should have washed ashore by now. As investigators assembled the puzzle pieces, the picture became no clearer. The evidence suggested neither a simple accident nor foul play, but something altogether more mysterious. As investigators exhausted conventional explanations, 5 distinct theories emerged about the fate of the Greywood family. Each had its proponents and detractors, with evidence supporting and contradicting each possibility. Theory 1. Rogue wave or severe weather. Incident marine meteorologist Dr. Sophia Lynn believes a rogue wave, a spontaneous formation that can reach heights of 80 to 100 feet, might explain the family's disappearance. The microburst storm created perfect conditions for a rogue wave formation, Dr. Lynn explained. Such a wave could have capsized the boat or swept the family overboard before they could radio a complete distress call. This theory is supported by the boat's erratic final movements and the frantic nature of Brielle's last sketches. The Coast Guard has documented cases where vessels have been capsized by rogue waves, only to right themselves afterward due to built-in flotation systems. However, critics point out that the boat showed no evidence of having capsized completely. Additionally, if the family had been swept overboard within miles of shore, probability suggests at least some evidence, bodies, life jackets, personal effects, should have been recovered. Theory 2. Mechanical failure leading to catastrophe. Naval engineer Victor Roberts proposed that the driftwood may have experienced a catastrophic mechanical failure that wasn't apparent in the subsequent investigation. Carbon monoxide poisoning from an engine malfunction could have incapacitated the family, Roberts suggested. In their confusion, they may have attempted to abandon ship unnecessarily, launching the life raft in increasingly rough conditions. This would explain the deployed life raft, the opened first aid kit, and the lack of struggle on board. However, post-discovery testing of the engine revealed no evidence of such a malfunction, and carbon monoxide would have dissipated long before the boat was found. Theory 3. Third-party involvement. Some investigators have reluctantly considered the possibility of foul play. Harbor Heights has seen increasing drug trafficking along its coastline, with smugglers using fishing vessels as cover. The Greywoods could have witnessed something they weren't supposed to see, suggested retired Detective Howard Bryce, who consulted on the case. The family might have been forcibly removed from their vessel, which was then abandoned to create the impression of a maritime accident. This theory accounts for the family's complete disappearance and the boat's relatively good condition. It also explains the course deviation away from harbor. However, no evidence of other vessels in proximity has been found in radar records, and the Greywood family had no known connections to criminal elements. Theory 4. Voluntary disappearance. Though considered unlikely, investigators had to explore whether the family may have staged their own disappearance. Financial records showed no unusual activity. Anton and Brielle had modest savings, no large insurance policies, and no significant debts. Their passports remained in their home. Friends and family reported no unusual behavior or conversations suggesting dissatisfaction with their lives. There was simply no motive, stated FBI agent Danielle Cross, who reviewed this aspect of the case. Everything indicates a family deeply connected to their community with plans for the future. Willow had registered for summer camp, Brielle had gallery commitments. Anton was scheduled to lead a research trip the following month. Theory 5. Unknown. Marine phenomenon. The final theory ventures into territory most investigators are hesitant to discuss officially. Harbor Heights has centuries of maritime folklore, including tales of unusual phenomena in the deeper waters offshore. Brielle's final sketches, showing a large shape in the water, have fueled speculation about an encounter with something unknown. Local fisherman Thomas Blackwell has collected stories from generations of sailors about a deep trench 10 miles offshore, known as the Shadow, where vessels have reported strange equipment malfunctions and disorienting experiences. "I'm not saying it's a sea monster," Blackwell clarified, "but there are things in deep water we don't understand. Powerful currents, magnetic anomalies, gas vents on the seafloor that can affect navigation and human cognition." Several of Brielle's earlier paintings, displayed in the local gallery, depicted swirling dark forms beneath boats, images eerily similar to her final sketch aboard the driftwood. Marine biologist Dr. Wells acknowledged the limits of scientific knowledge. "We've explored less than 5% of our oceans. The Gulf of Maine has deep trenches and complex underwater topography. While I hesitate to endorse supernatural explanations, there are documented natural phenomena that could disorient experienced sailors." Each theory offers partial answers, but fails to address all the evidence. As investigators continue to analyze the recovered boat, the Greywood family's true fate remains elusive. 6 months after the driftwood's discovery, the investigation remains open but inactive, classified as an unsolved maritime disappearance. For those following the case, several crucial questions persist, defying conventional explanation. First, why was the boat relatively intact? Maritime experts confirm that a vessel adrift for 3 months would typically show significant damage from storms, collisions with debris, or shoreline impacts. Yet the driftwood appeared almost purposefully placed at its discovery location, with damage inconsistent with violent natural forces. "It's as if someone gently set it there," observed Coast Guard investigator Morgan. "Nature is rarely so considerate with abandoned vessels." Second, if the family abandoned ship as the missing life raft suggests, where did they go? The raft was designed with multiple redundant flotation chambers, bright orange coloring, reflective strips, and a locator beacon, all engineered for maximum visibility and detection. Even if the raft had ultimately failed, components would likely have washed ashore. Oceanographer Dr. Eliza Chamberlain conducted drift pattern analysis based on currents during and after the storm. "We modeled numerous scenarios. If conventional physics applied, something, the raft, life jackets, personal effects, should have been found within a 50-mile radius of the initial location." Third, the garbled radio transmission continues to puzzle investigators. Audio enhancement revealed sounds that experts cannot conclusively identify, described variously as rushing water, metallic scraping, or electronic interference. The transmission ends not with an abrupt cutoff suggesting equipment failure, but with several seconds of open-channel static that audio analysts find inconsistent with known transmission patterns. Fourth, what explains the significance of Brielle's final sketches? Art therapist Rachel Winters, who reviewed the images, noted, "These aren't just documentations of a storm. The progression shows increasing psychological distress and possibly fear of something specific, not abstract fear of the situation." The final image suggests she was trying to capture something she was actually seeing. This connects to the fifth question. What was the dark shape captured in both Brielle's sketch and the blurry final photograph? Marine biology experts have ruled out known species like whales or basking sharks based on the apparent dimensions and form. Some have suggested a submerged object like a shipping container or submarine, but no vessels or submersibles were reported in the area. Finally, perhaps most disturbing, is the fishing lure tied to the radio antenna. Coast Guard personnel confirmed it belonged to Willow's new fishing rod, and the knots used to secure it match those Anton taught at boating safety seminars, suggesting it was deliberately placed by a family member. But why? Was it a signal? A message? A marker for rescuers? "That lure haunts me," admitted Lieutenant Commander Reynolds. "It implies they had time to think, to plan, to try communicating something. But what were they trying to tell us?" These questions remain unanswered, transforming what might have been a tragic but explicable accident into something that continues to challenge our understanding of what happened on that May afternoon. Today, the driftwood rests in a covered slip at Harbor Heights Marina, a silent memorial to Anton, Brielle, and Willow Greywood. The town council voted unanimously to preserve the vessel rather than destroy or auction it, acknowledging its significance to the community's collective grief and memory. "Some wounds don't heal, but they become part of who we are," said Mayor Eleanor Harper at the dedication ceremony. This boat reminds us of 3 beloved community members, but also of the respect we must maintain for the sea's power and mystery. The Greywood home has been transformed into an art center for children, funded by an anonymous donor and dedicated to fostering the creative spirit that defined Brielle's life. Willow's science projects inspired an annual marine biology scholarship for middle school students, while Anton's detailed sailing logs and safety protocols have been incorporated into required reading for local boating licenses. Each May 7th, Harbor Heights observes Greywood Day, when fishing boats and pleasure craft form a circle at the family's last known coordinates. Flowers are cast upon the water, and a moment of silence honors not just the Greywoods, but all those lost at sea. The disappearance fundamentally changed Harbor Heights' relationship with the ocean. Marina regulations now require enhanced emergency equipment, including personal locator beacons for all passengers. The Coast Guard established a new response station closer to the area where the family vanished, reducing emergency response times by crucial minutes. "We can't prevent every tragedy," explained Harbor Master Pike, "but we can learn from them. The Greywoods would have wanted their experience to protect others." For investigators, the case remains uniquely frustrating. Coast Guard Commander Franklin, who led the recovery of the driftwood, reflected, "In most maritime incidents, we eventually understand what happened, even when we can't save everyone. Here, we have more questions now than when we started. That's rare in my 30 years of service." The disappearance of the Greywood family ultimately reminds us of the ocean's enduring power, not just its physical force, but its capacity to preserve its mysteries. In an age where we expect answers, surveillance, and certainty, there remain corners of our world where human understanding falters. Dr. Eleanor Bennett perhaps expressed it best. What makes this case so affecting is that it forces us to confront how little control we actually have. We build boats, study weather patterns, create emergency protocols, but the natural world can still render all our preparations meaningless in moments. What do you think happened to the Greywood family? Share your theories in the comments below. If you want more unsolved mysteries like this, subscribe to Last Seen Stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Next week, we'll explore the baffling case of twin sisters who vanished from their college campus, only to have their personal belongings appear arranged in a perfect circle in the middle of a cornfield 15 miles away. Thank you for joining us on another journey into the unknown. Here at Last Seen Stories, we believe every mystery deserves to be told, every disappearance remembered, and every question asked, even when answers remain elusive. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most haunting stories are the ones without endings.